in our reality, and me as a normal person, taking one step back and look at the reality and say, hey, this is not normal. And as a normal person to say it makes a difference, because if you're abnormal and you say it's abnormal, people will take it, in one way. But if you're a normal guy, a very normative, Sachi maybe, so that's a different aspect. And I think that it's all about being aware and try to look at the world in different eyes, not only in your eyes. I don't feel that I'm special. I think that it's just a matter of awareness.
Yeah, I guess that I would just guess that many of your friends or people that you got responses to said it's very important to talk about. But and I guess that lots of males in Israel, stereotype guys, would think that way, but they will not do it in a business social network usually. And that is something which is unique. And the fact that you decided to dedicate your time to do that and other stuff that we're going to talk about, I think it's most of the gender equality organizations in the world that I know of the leaders are women, right? So it has something to I don't know, you could relate to it in many ways, but that's the fact.
Yeah, I think this is our flag in Shavuot, that we are. First of all, it's my wife and me, where we founded the NGO. That's first, but also the board of members of the board, are half male and half female. So this is our, I would say, flag, because we believe that gender equality is something that should be dealt with both by male and female. I think that's a standard that we hope to achieve. I agree with you that it's not the situation, the common situation today.
So we have a comment from David Wasserman. So thank you. We need 100% of people of this country rowing in order to succeed and have an impact on the world. Great talk. So thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
So why do you think diversity is so important, and why do you think it's important for Israel in general and society?
I'm going to surprise you. I don't think it's important. I think it's needed. It's it's not fair not to have equality. And when I see my wife and she's afraid, and she's tall, she's strong, and when I ask her, why don't you go jogging, running in the park after 6 p.m. And she told me, I'm afraid. I don't want my girls, I don't want girls to live in such a world. And I think it's just fair to balance the situation that was created after years of inequality. It's not like I don't believe that people say, wake up in the morning and say, today I'm going to be unequal towards women. It's not a situation. Most of us don't think about what we do. Most of us just live. And I think that to change normality, to change the way the reality, the way it works for thousands of years or for hundreds of years, that's a challenge. And I think that one of the reasons why I posted the post about the twins and all of this is try to change the reality, step by step. Once again, I'm 100% sure that if I will look at the likes and the comments about the posts, I would say it's 80% women. Yeah, but still you have 20% men or 30% men. And second, I think that it brought to the table in the houses conversation which was unique. Even if it was brought by the women, that's fine. But it brought a new conversation to the table, and hopefully, this will move the needle.
Yeah. It reminds me of something that I always tell my kids. I take them to protests, and then we were going to Tel Aviv for many, many protests. And in many cases, they tell me, especially the teens, like, where are you going? It will not change anything. You're just going. And it doesn't matter what is the cause of the protest. And I always tell them that there is this song in Israel, tipa or tipa. It's like a drop after where a drop will become a sea. And I always think about it like we're doing really, really small steps in our environment, in our house, in our community, and further. And that's the only way bottom up to do changes. It will probably not come from the top down thing.
What's very interesting about what you just said, that when I was a kid, my parents took me to many protesters, and it's so strange because today when I was chairman of the Hebrew University Student Union, so it was like the stereotype of walking and doing protest every day. And personally, I'm not the guy that shouts and hold signs. It's not me, and I found my unique way how to change the world. And social entrepreneurship, where you're measured by execution skills and making things happen and fundraising and putting together people. I found that as a much more efficient way for me to try to change the world.
Yeah, of course. So when we're talking about what you're doing with the girls in Shavuot, it's a leadership program. And what do you teach them? What do you think is important for their lives and for success for themselves?
So Shavuot started, as I told you, in this 4 days hiking. And one of the things that we came along in this hike was the fact that there's a research from Stanford University, Carol Dweck. Actually, we met her a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She's so smart and special. Wow.
Yeah, we knocked on her door. We sent her an email saying, "Hey, we're gonna be in Stanford. We founded an NGO based on your research," and she didn't answer. So
but you're an Israeli, so
that's true.
It didn't do anything to you, right?
Yeah. So we went to her office. We expected her not to be in the office because she's 80 years old or something like that, and she was there. And we knocked on the door. She was with a student, and then we waited. And the student left, and then we told her, "Hey, Professor Dweck, we came from Israel to see you." And she was like, "I don't have time." And we said, "It's gonna be 5 minutes." And yeah, it was very, very Israeli.
Yeah, very.
So we met her, and it was very, very interesting, and we kept some kind of a connection since then. Anyway, so
just tell me, what did she think about what you said about the nonprofit?
First of all, I think she's Jew. I'm quite sure. So she had a kind of connection to Israel. She liked it very much. I think as an academic person, a researcher, there's one thing that you write books and you write reports and when someone takes it and makes it into an actual thing, I think it's a very interesting thing to see. So she really liked it. So basically, going back to the initial story, her study and other studies shows that girls at the age of 12, when you put a boy and a girl, and both of them will fail an exam. The girl will tend to say, "I'm not good at math. I shouldn't deal with math." The boy will say, "The exam was wrong. My teacher was wrong. My parents were wrong. I'm fine." And once again, it's just a tendency. It's not 100%, but that's a tendency. And one of the things that Karen and other researchers says that this tendency affects the rest of your life, because it means that you want go to learn 5. You make learn math in the university. You want apply to positions you don't feel comfortable to take.
Yeah.
And it's quite common, the rest of the facts. But what I'm saying, that one of the things that Carol said, that in order to change this tendency is by teaching girls, young girls, and specifically at the age of between 10 to 13, because that's an age where you have a reduction of a drop of 30% in the self-esteem of girls, which is fascinating. And actually, we validated this also in Israel. This was a global fact, but we had a research done a couple of months ago in more than 600 kids in Israel, and we validated also here, unfortunately. And in order to change this, what we do is we teach them how to set goals and how to do a self-feedback. And when I say set goals, for us as mature, sounds quite obvious, but for a 12-year-old girl, it's not obvious. Saying, let's look at the next month. First, it's not obvious for a girl to say what's going to be in the future. That's one step, which is interesting. And second, in next month, I have an exam in math exam. What should I do in order to get a grade of 80 in this exam? So I need to have a plan. And then you need to follow the plan. And when you get to the exam and you got 75, you should debrief yourself and say, okay, I got 75 not because I'm not good at math. Maybe I did the plan wrong, or maybe I prepared to the exam with not the right person. So you learn how to see in every failure and success as a key to learning. And that's basically where Shavuot started. And this is one feature that we are very focused, like it's setting goals and self-feedback. And other fields are public speaking, social networks, entrepreneurship, taking decisions, and it's all being dealt with the inspiration of inspiring women from the history.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that I cannot convince myself that I'm worth, as you say, Shavuot. I need to do things in order to overcome my fears, in order to create something in the world, and then see, I can do this. And only this is the only way to really have self-esteem and to really understand that, you can do it. And it's not that you are maybe less successful in math, or you don't know it, or whatever. But what is the difference when you're saying, like, for young teens in general? I have 2 of them at home. Mm-hmm. So that's very common. What you're saying is that usually when they're not successful, probably they will blame themselves, and that's the component which is different.
Yeah, and I think there are 2 other layers for what we do. Is first Shavuot, which is worthy, but in parallel, not in singular. And I'm saying that, and I'm mentioning that because I think that networks in life is one of the most important things. For example, in Israel, most of the male have our military network, which is A200 and everyone and the unit he belonged to. So alumni organization are very strong in Israel. Most of the women don't have alumni network. That's first. So what we are trying to create is each one of the individuals that participate in Shavuot feel worthy, but also to create a network of girls that speak the same language and can help each other by in the rest of their life. So that's one layer. The second layer above that is history. History was written by mostly male. Most of the inspiring people that we know are male. And that's given. It's the history. And one of the things we try to achieve in Shavuot is to show female inspiring women role models in order to show them, hey, you can be whatever you want. And I think that this layer of you as yourself feel worthy, as a community, you should feel worth it altogether, and you have inspiration, you can do everything. And we truly believe that if you can see it, you can be it.
Yeah. So till now we talked about the social entrepreneurship, and now I want to go into the business entrepreneurship. And how did you do the jump from one thing to the other? And how do you see the connection in general?
It's a good question. So at the age of 30, which was 6 years ago, I decided that I want to get out of my comfort zone. Till then, I was only in the Navy and in the world of social and political entrepreneurship, as I said, NGOs, the Hebrew University Student Union. And I must admit, it was not an easy job to do. When I came to interviews, I remember one of the first interviews, they looked at me and say, what is your connection to this job, to this word, to this ecosystem? It was really hard to digest. And for me, it was part of my, I don't know if my mission, my journey, saying, okay, I feel that I know how to do social entrepreneurship. Now I want to see other forms of entrepreneurship, and I insisted, and then I was very consistent. And then somebody opened the door for me in a VC, in a venture capital in Jerusalem, and that was my first step in this world. I participated in an entrepreneurship program in Brandeis University near Boston, but afterwards my first position was in a VC. And today, in a retrospective approach, I can tell you that I see many common dominators between social entrepreneurship and business entrepreneurship. I think the soft skills, whether it's the ability to speak, public speaking, whether it's to be very to have a grit, to have a perseverance, the ability to get no's and to keep doing, to the ability to put people together, to put enthusiasm into the eyes of other people. I think that's very common. Of course, it's a different situation to fundraise for philanthropy and to fundraise as an investment, because the whole relationship based on different incentives. But once again, I think that in the initial parts of building a company, most of it is when you fundraise is based on your ability to harness the trust of the other side in you, not in the idea, in you, and that's very similar to NGOs.
Yeah. I could tell you that I work with lots of entrepreneurs through the years, and I've met many of them, and most of them, when I talk to people in this show, I ask people what is the most important part of being an entrepreneur, and most of them would say the mindset, like what you said, like the grit, the perseverance, the insisting to go and meet Carol Dweck, although she's busy and she's not answering, and she tells you just to go away. I think this is the most important part of going through this journey of creating something in an unknown situation, with getting lots of failures and no's, as you said, and the fact that you know that you want to create something is the most important part, because you will probably get lots of downsides on the way. And if you don't have it, so that's the most important part. So for sure that is something which is part of what you're doing, right?
I think an interesting way to look at it, and I thought about it a couple of days ago, as a funnel, like a sales funnel. When you have, this is the word, this is the people you approach, and this is the people you manage to sell. Let's say that's a simplification. Yeah. And when you think about fundraising, whether it's for an NGO or whether for a startup, as a funnel, saying that it set the expectation that you will get no's, and this is natural. That's fine. If you think about life as a funnel, no, it's just another, it's part of the game, and you shouldn't take
Yeah.
it personal.
It's even the default, I would say. Like first you get a no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say, like, for people who want to build a company or to be successful in business? Would you say that diversity, when you know about your first hat as a social entrepreneur, is important for business too?
Let me take it even to a broader way. So diversity, I think, is just one form of EQ, of emotional quality. And I think that being able to see reality from the eyes of a different person, which means to be very sensitive about, and I'm not speaking about politically correct. I speak about the ability to truly understand his where he's coming from or she's coming from, and then based on this to make a decision how you react. That's fine. But I think that EQ is a key element for every successful leader. So diversity is just one form of EQ.
Yeah. And we know that when we're talking about numbers, that when you have people like women in your board, you're more successful. If you have more women in your higher management, you're probably making more money in general. And that's why many VCs are trying to take that into consideration, other than the legal or the rules in the country. To just to be, especially like in the past, I met many entrepreneurs who are building things, let's say, for consumers, and usually most of the consumers in the world are women. In general, they buy more, and they buy everything, not only for themselves. It's not like buying shoes. They're buying the presents. They're buying everything for the house, other than electronics. They're the ones who manage everything, and you see lots of men selling to women, not really understanding them in many cases. And I think that this is something very critical, just to understand that if you're selling to someone, and it's not only your brand and it's not only your product, it's the way that you see your business when you handle that.
Yeah. First of all, I 100% agree with you, but I must say now we're in a process of fundraising, and it goes back to what I said in the beginning, that you have the reality and you want to change the reality. And sometimes to do that, it's not very simple. And just to give an example, when you go to angels in Israel, I think there are like 5 angels or 10 female angels.
Female, for sure.
Yeah. And that's a challenge, because you want diversity, but reality don't help you to encourage diversity. Now you are an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, you're in a survival mode.
Yeah.
So now to put an emphasis on diversity when you're on survival mode, it's very hard.
Of course.
So it's a challenge. Like how do you walk the walk?
Yeah.
And not just talk the talk, even though the situation and the circumstances are very challenging. That's a challenge.
Of course. Currently, I'm working with a company who is a startup in Israel, and they have 50% women, and that's the main reason I decided to join them and work with them for so long. And I told him, this is the highest thing that you have in your company. That's, for me, is the most important part. And they were a bit disappointed, because they thought I would say it's their talent or their idea. But for me, seeing so many startups with, 80-90% men, and if they have a woman, it's HR, more or less. For me, it's the most important part of what they're doing. And I think that this is what will make them successful in the end.
I agree.
It's everything.
I agree, but by the way, when you said mainly HR, it reminded me the fact that like almost 3 years ago, I was exposed to the world of sales in Israel and in general. And before that, I was I think like 90% of the Israelis was or thinking that sales is like pitching Dead Sea products in malls. And 3 years ago, when I was exposed to the world of B2B sales for technologies, I understood that's a fascinating world and very clever and very sophisticated. And I was very upset to see that almost no women goes to this direction. And most of the female goes to most of the women goes to customer success, which less salesy. But I must admit, I think that's a great opportunity today, mainly for the one who didn't go to learn computer science and the R&D part of the of companies. I think that's a huge opportunity for women. If you hear me now, go to be sales women in startups. That's a great opportunity, very interesting, and a great way how to to move forward in the business world and in high tech.
Yeah, I think that in general, I totally agree. For me, it was not like the Dead Sea people who selling carts in the malls in the US. For me, it was like a used car salesman, which is even worse. And when I understood the world of sales, and I know that for sure it demands so much EQ just to understand who's in front of you and what he's really saying or not saying to you, actually. And I think that I read like a few months ago an article saying that women are much better in sales, even though like you would expect it will be more manly, because we're talking about numbers and money, which is an issue with women in general. And when you think about sales as connecting to people, just understanding what will be a win-win here, especially if it's a big like agreement, it's the most important part. The other thing, like technical stuff, and the numbers are part of it, but it's, I would say, like 30% of the deal, maybe.
And I first I agree, and second, just to say that I think that the power shift now under COVID-19, where